Lyra had always been careful. Every movement, every glance, every small gesture had to be calculated. It wasn't arrogance, but necessity. On her home planet looks determined destiny. Even slight differences could bring ridicule or distrust. But here on Earth, among humans, she thought she could hide. She had taken every precaution. Her humanoid disguise, her soft tone, her careful expressions. Still, deep inside, she knew that the moment someone saw her true self, everything might fall apart. The research station hummed with activity as Lyra moved through the hallways, her long fingers lightly touching the metal railings. She studied humans quietly, always observing, always analyzing. They were curious, emotional, and yet in ways she did not fully understand, capable of a warmth that her own species often lacked. Her assignment was simple: observe, learn, and report. She had no orders to interact beyond professional necessities. But the humans were fascinating, and the station offered opportunities that could not be ignored. It was during one of these quiet observations that she first saw Ethan. He was a young engineer with a quiet confidence that drew her attention immediately. His hair was messy and his uniform wrinkled, yet there was a light in his eyes that made people trust him. She watched as he bent over a complex control panel, adjusting circuits with skill and precision. He didn't notice her at first, lost in his work, but she couldn't help studying him. There was something different about him, something that made her heart quicken despite her careful self-control. Days passed, and their paths crossed more often. Each time, he would smile, nod, or ask a question about her work. At first, she responded with polite detachment. She told herself that her mission was to remain professional. Personal attachments were dangerous, especially with humans who might react unpredictably to her. But she felt herself drawn to him. There was no reason to, at least none she could understand scientifically. Yet she found herself looking forward to their encounters. One evening, the station announced a minor system malfunction in the docking bay. Lyra volunteered, her curiosity stronger than her caution. She found Ethan already there, his hands covered in grease, frowning at the blinking consoles. "I could use a second pair of hands," he said without looking up. His voice was calm, almost casual, yet something in it made her chest tighten. Lyra hesitated for a moment, then joined him. They worked side by side, exchanging brief technical remarks. She explained the adjustments needed in precise terms, and he listened carefully, occasionally nodding or offering a suggestion. The atmosphere was quiet but electric, an unspoken connection forming between them. She felt a strange warmth, human concept she had studied but rarely experienced personally. After the repairs were complete, Ethan leaned against the console, wiping his hands. He looked at her, really looked at her, and she froze slightly. She had tried to maintain her humanoid disguise perfectly. But there were moments when her alien features shone through a flicker of color in her eyes, a subtle glow in her skin. She expected surprise, fear, maybe even disgust. Instead, he smiled. "You did great today," he said. Simple words, but they hit her differently. There was no fear, no judgment, only acknowledgement. She felt herself relax slightly, though she kept her usual careful posture. Over the next few days, Ethan's behavior did not change. He continued to ask questions, continued to involve her in projects, and occasionally shared small stories about his life. Lyra listened with fascination. Humans had such strange customs, so many small habits and rituals, and yet they carried them with such conviction. She found herself laughing quietly at some of his tales, marveling at the way he could make something as simple as a broken circuit or a missed deadline sound like an adventure. Despite the growing comfort, Lyra remained cautious. She told herself repeatedly that she could not allow herself to become attached. She had seen what happened when humans discovered the unusual in others. They could be cruel, unkind, or dismissive. Her appearance, if revealed fully, might trigger fear. Even here, in a professional environment, she could not ignore the possibility. Her species had evolved to be cautious. An instinct whispered constantly, "Hide, protect, avoid exposure." Then the accident happened. It was small, seemingly insignificant, but it changed everything. A minor system overload caused a small energy surge in the docking bay. Lyra moved quickly, stepping in front of Ethan to redirect the energy safely. But in the process, her disguise faltered. The soft glow beneath her skin became visible, her eyes flickered in color. No, and her true form emerged for a brief shining moment. She froze. Her chest tightened, and her mind raced through countless scenarios. Panic, rejection, and shame swirled in her thoughts. She had prepared for professional scrutiny, for human curiosity, but never for this raw exposure. She expected shock, horror, maybe even a scream. Ethan, however, simply paused. He studied her closely, his brow furrowed in thought, but there was no fear, no disgust, no turning away. For a moment the world seemed suspended. Lyra felt the weight of countless years of caution. All the lessons about hiding and pretending lift slightly. Finally, he smiled. A simple, genuine smile, and his voice broke the silence. "Would you like to grab dinner with me?" Her mind stumbled. Did he mean it? Could it be real? She had always assumed that humans would react to her appearance with fear, or at least avoidance. Yet here he was, asking her out, as though her alien features were not an obstacle at all. Lyra blinked, unsure how to respond. The room seemed smaller, brighter, filled with possibilities she had never considered. Her heart raced, and for the first time in her life, she felt a strange mix of excitement and uncertainty. What would it mean to trust a human? Could she allow herself to step beyond observation and into connection? Ethan waited patiently, leaning casually against the console, his gaze warm and patient. He did not push, did not judge. He simply offered the invitation, a bridge to something new, something unknown. For hours after, Lyra could not focus on her work. Her mind replayed the moment again and again. She thought of the warnings she had received, of the countless scenarios in which humans might reject her, and yet she could not shake the image of his smile. The calm in his eyes, the simple human gesture of invitation. She wandered to the observation deck, gazing at the stars. Earth was small from above, a blue and green jewel floating in darkness, yet it held a warmth she could feel even here. The city lights glimmered far below, each one a story, a life, a potential connection. Her species had long valued perfection, symmetry, and conformity. But here she realized that there was another measure: courage, curiosity, and openness. Lyra thought of Ethan again, of his simple question, of the calmness and acceptance in his demeanor. Her chest tightened with a mix of fear and hope. She had spent so long hiding, so long fearing rejection, and now, in a moment, the possibility of acceptance appeared. It was dizzying, thrilling, and terrifying all at once. That night, she could hardly sleep. She lay in her quarters, staring at the ceiling, replaying the day's events. The glow beneath her skin pulsed softly in the darkness, a rhythm she had never noticed before, reflecting the turmoil and excitement within. She wondered if she could trust her instincts, if she could believe that a human could see beyond appearances. By morning, her decision had taken shape. She would go. She would accept the invitation, not because she was certain of what would happen, but because the chance to connect, to step beyond fear, was worth more than years of isolation. She would take the risk, as she prepared for her first dinner with a human who had seen her true form and still chosen her. She felt a strange calm. Her hands trembled slightly, her heart raced, but beneath it all was a sense of possibility. Perhaps humans were capable of understanding and acceptance in ways her species had never imagined. Perhaps there was more to connection than appearances, more to trust than symmetry or conformity. Lyra left her quarters, walking through the station with careful steps. She adjusted her cloak slightly, aware that humans might notice her glow in dim light. She rehearsed words she might say, questions she might ask, trying to anticipate his reactions. And yet she knew that no preparation could replace the reality of the encounter. The unknown stretched before her like the stars outside the observation deck, vast and full of potential. When she reached the docking bay, Ethan was waiting, leaning casually against a railing. He looked up as she approached and smiled, the same warm, genuine smile that had shaken her confidence and filled her with hope. "Ready?" he asked. His tone was gentle, patient, inviting. Lyra nodded, her heart still racing. "Yes," she said softly. Her voice trembled slightly, but the words carried Oz. They left the station together. Lyra felt the weight of fear and doubt lessen. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was hers to walk. For the first time, she felt that perhaps being different was not a curse, but a bridge to understanding, to acceptance, and perhaps to something even more extraordinary. The city lights of Earth stretched before them, a tapestry of possibilities. Lyra's glow pulsed faintly in the night, and Ethan did not flinch. Instead, he reached out, offering his hand. A simple gesture of trust and companionship. She took it, feeling a thrill she could not explain, a connection that defied fear. The shuttle descended slowly through the swirling violet clouds of Zithra, its hull trembling as the planet's stormy atmosphere buffeted. Inside, Dr. Ethan Mercer gripped the armrest of his seat, his eyes fixed on the observation window. Zithera was beautiful but dangerous, a planet full of jagged cliffs, acidic rivers, and a thin, toxic atmosphere that made even breathing a careful task. Ethan had seen dangerous worlds before, but nothing like this. He had come not for exploration, but for medicine. A massive outbreak had struck one of the Clithian colonies, leaving their population weak, sick, and desperate. The Clethians themselves were known as proud, disciplined, and stubborn. Their medical practices were rooted in centuries-old traditions, precise rituals that had never failed them until now. "Dr. Mercer," a voice called from behind him. It was Lieutenant Carver, the mission's security officer. "We'll be landing in 10 minutes. Ready for the welcoming committee?" Ethan gave a tight smile. "I've been ready my whole life." Carver frowned. "I hope so. I don't like the look of this place. The Clithians. They aren't exactly friendly, you know. Any mistake, and they won't forgive it." Ethan nodded but didn't answer. He had heard the warnings before. Humans and Clithians did not always see eye to eye, especially when it came to medicine. For them, every step was measured, every decision governed by strict rules. They considered experimentation to be dangerous, reckless, almost criminal. But Ethan had no choice. Lives were at stake. When the shuttle finally touched down on the rocky landing platform, a delegation of Clithian healers awaited. They were tall, with sleek silver skin, and eyes that reflected light like molten metal. Their expressions were cold and calculating. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. But he reminded himself that fear would not save lives. One of the elders stepped forward, her presence commanding. She introduced herself as High Healer Zyra, and her voice carried authority that made even Carver stiffen. "Human," she said, her tone almost accusatory. "You enter our colony at a time of crisis. We have heard of your methods. Be warned. Our rules are not suggestions." Ethan inclined his head politely. "I respect your laws, High Healer Zyra. I am here to help, not to disrupt. But I also believe that saving a life may require new approaches." The elder's eyes narrowed. "You will follow our protocol. Any deviation is forbidden." Ethan understood immediately. Any hint of unconventional medicine could result in his expulsion or worse. But when he was shown to the infirmary, he saw why Zyra had little faith. Lyria, a young Clithian female, lay on a high-tech medical bed. Her body racked with symptoms the Clithian healers could not stop. Her breathing was shallow, her skin dull, and her limbs weak. "She is beyond our aid," one of the junior healers muttered. "Her condition is irreversible." Ethan knelt beside her bed and examined her vitals. His mind raced. The Clithian measurements were precise, but they told only part of the story. He could see the subtle signs of life, tiny fluctuations that indicated the body was still fighting. He had seen this in humans many times before, but never in an alien physiology. "You're wrong," Ethan said softly, mostly to himself. Then louder, "I can help her." The healers froze. One of them stepped forward, anger flashing in her eyes. "You dare claim you can heal her? Human, this is our law. She is beyond saving. If you interfere, you will be punished." Ethan met her gaze without flinching. "I do not mean to defy your law. but I also cannot stand by while a life is lost when it can be saved. I need to try. High Healer Zyra's eyes were sharp, piercing. You have 3 days. 3 cycles of Zithra's sun. If she does not improve, you leave, or we will remove you. Ethan nodded. 3 days were not much time, but it was enough if he worked carefully. He began studying her condition in secret, analyzing the alien biology, cross-referencing Clithian records with human medical databases he had brought. Zithra's pathogens were unlike anything on Earth, and Lyria's body reacted differently to medicines. He had to improvise. In the first hours, Ethan administered treatments disguised as routine Clithian procedures. He used tiny doses of human antibiotics, nanobot-assisted immunotherapy, and adaptive enzymes that he adjusted based on the Clithian biochemistry he had studied. To the Clithians, it looked like he was following their strict rituals, but each step was carefully calibrated to give Lyria a chance. The first night was tense. Ethan barely slept, monitoring her vitals and noting every change. Carver, who had stayed in the infirmary for support, whispered, "Do you really think this will work?" Ethan didn't answer. Words would not help. The subtle fluctuations in her vital signs were encouraging. Her pulse was erratic but persistent. Her oxygen levels, though low, were steady. By morning, there was a faint improvement. Lyria's color had returned slightly. Her breathing was a little stronger. The junior healers noticed it and whispered among themselves. Ethan kept his face neutral, knowing that one wrong move could undo all progress. High Healer Zyra came to inspect. She walked slowly around the bed, observing Lyria's vitals on the monitors. Her eyes were skeptical. "Perhaps there is a slight change," she admitted, though her tone carried no warmth. "But it could be a natural fluctuation. Do not mistake this for a miracle." Ethan simply nodded. He didn't need her approval. Every second he gained was a second closer to saving her life. Over the next 24 hours, Ethan's work became a careful dance. He adjusted doses, monitored immune responses, and introduced elements of human regenerative medicine. Every time he stepped beyond Clithian procedures, he documented it as part of their official protocol to avoid suspicion. It was exhausting, mentally and physically, but he could not stop. By the second cycle of Zithra's sun, Lyria's condition had visibly improved. Her skin regained its natural sheen, her eyes opened slightly, and she weakly followed Ethan with her gaze. The junior healers were astonished. Some began to whisper that maybe, just maybe, the human methods were working. High Healer Zyra returned in the afternoon. Her eyes widened slightly at the monitors, but she said nothing. Silence stretched as she observed Ethan's work, the weight of centuries of tradition pressing down on them all. Ethan finally spoke. "She's responding to the treatments. The combination of Clithian care and adaptive human therapy is working." Zyra's eyes narrowed. "This is unprecedented. If she survives, it will change everything we know about medicine on Zithra. But your methods, they are dangerous." "I understand," Ethan replied. "But if I had waited for your laws to catch up with the disease, she would not have lived." The elder considered his words, then left without further comment. Ethan returned to Lyria's bedside. She was breathing more steadily now, her pulse strong enough to give him hope. For the first time, he allowed himself a small smile. That evening, as the purple sun dipped below the jagged horizon, Ethan reflected on the path ahead. He knew that saving Lyria was only the beginning. The Clithian medical establishment would not easily accept human methods. He would face scrutiny, suspicion, and perhaps punishment. But if he succeeded, he could change the way the world's thought about medicine. Carver, watching from the corner of the infirmary, shook his head. "You're insane, you know that? Defying centuries of alien law, all for one patient." Ethan didn't answer. He simply looked at Lyria, seeing the faint rise and fall of her chest, the spark of life returning to her eyes. Insanity or not, he had made his choice. And for her, he would risk everything. As the night deepened, Ethan continued to monitor, document, and adjust treatments. Every fluctuation in her vitals was a clue, every change in her body a piece of the puzzle. He worked tirelessly, guided by instinct, knowledge, and a stubborn belief in the value of life. By the end of the first part of the story, Lyria's condition had stabilized enough to give hope, though she remained critically ill. The Clithians were divided, some skeptical, some quietly amazed. Ethan knew that the next cycle would be even more critical. The following hours could either cement his success or doom him to failure and disgrace. But one thing was certain: he would not give up. The human doctor had stepped into a world that had never seen his kind before, and he was determined to defy every expectation, every law, and every doubt. The battle for Lyria's life was only beginning, and Ethan Mercer was ready to face it head-on, even if it meant challenging the very foundation of Clithian medicine itself.